The fake, illegally constituted January 6th so-called select committee has now been busted. They are admitting openly on camera that they created a story. They had to engage in storytelling to convince America that this was such an insurrection, that it was so profound that they needed to think about the end of America. Because if you just listen to what happened on the ground, listen to the reality of the protests, you would recognize this was not that big of a deal. It was 4 hours or so, and they voted that same night, and they turned it into a civil war, the crime of the century, the worst attack on the American democracy since the Civil War, forgetting about those little things like, Pearl Harbor, 9/11, and so on. But here is the story. They are involved in a documentary, and this is an excerpt from that documentary, and here is what it sounds like, where they're admitting that they had to create storytelling to convince Americans that this was actually a bad thing. Here's what it sounds like.
Thompson's committee had gathered a trove of information. The challenge, what to do with it.
The one thing that we knew was the information that we have is compelling. The thing we needed to do was tell that to the American people in a compelling way.
That's not your job, first of all. So your job is to just investigate the facts, theoretically, right? It's a congressional inquiry where you would have oppositional lines of questioning, right? You'd have opening arguments from both sides. You'd have an adversarial proceeding. One side would ask questions that actually provide a different narrative, the opposite narrative of the main narrative. That's kind of how it happens in court of law. You've got a defense and a prosecution. But that's not what happened here. They needed to tell a story. Facts that are compelling on their own. You don't have to dress them up. When you hear something very bad, you just go, dang, that was bad. Like when a Koberger situation happens or something. You don't need to dress that up. You just know it. For this, it wasn't enough. They had to turn it into this fake show. And so they brought this guy in to do it.
So that's why we brought in a former president of ABC News.
Yeah, I got a call pretty much out of the blue from the January 6th committee. They wanted a storyteller. And while they were brilliant lawyers, storytelling for a mass audience is not what they do.
Yeah, gotta fake it, man.
To bring in a guy like this who would think outside the box really did prove to be fruitful. And it was Goldston who really began to envision this as, in a way, a kind of mini-series, that there would be sort of 9 episodes, and that these episodes would tackle particular themes.
Attack on the Capitol. The investigation.
The first hearing was primetime television.
Listen.
The nation is about to witness a defining moment. The first hearing before the country, the results of the January 6th investigation.
This is an extraordinary moment in American history.
When it came to that first hearing, we knew how high the stakes were.
Is about to hold its first primetime hearing.
We were either gonna, make people realize that this was important. Once you've lost them for good.
Yeah, because people don't buy your garbage. So you have to shock and awe everybody into this. Turn it into an HBO special. Fabricate the truth, right? Extrapolate to turn this into a miniseries. It is a show. It's all a show, and it's so pathetic. And doesn't it feel like a scene from like V for Vendetta or one of those movies? Listening to these news anchors come out with their propaganda. It's a shocking moment in American history. Oh my gosh, give me a break, right? It was created as a show, and they all lapped it up like pathetic fools.
On the evening of June 9th, 8:01 p.m., the doors opened. My heart was beating pretty fast on June 9th, and it was a real question of, is this going to work or not?
All right, everybody, here we go. 5 on the line.
Are they going to buy it?
I'm in this tiny control room right up the stairs from Cannon Caucus, and we count down to the start of the hearing. And at that point, what can you do?
Here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
The Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol will be in order, without objection.
We wanted to make sure that this was a presentation that would grab the audience and hold on to them. Chairman Thompson loved to say, it's got to pop.
So you can see, right, it was all just scripted garbage. And remember, when we were covering some of this, it was really pathetic to watch, honestly. But if you notice, like at that very last scene, you see they were sitting there with teleprompters. They were just reading from the teleprompters. It was a book report. It wasn't even interesting because it was their own witnesses. They just called witness, direct exam after direct exam. There was no cross-examination. There was no minority party that was even there. I mean, they put on Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, but that was after Nancy Pelosi rejected the 5 Republicans that were supposed to be there under H.R. 503. Remember, H.R. 503 said 8 Democrats, 5 Republicans. Wasn't that? It was 7 Democrats, 2 Republicans. So they were out of order according to their own rules, their own documents. Nancy Pelosi rejected the minority, just posted 2 people on there and just conducted like fake trials. It was wild. And then they used all of their congressional power as a legislative body to go gather evidence with all of their letters. They did it outside of, having to swear an oath as a prosecutor to do justice or anything like that. And they got all the evidence. They bundled it up. They put a bow on it. They gave it over to Jack Smith and Big Fannie Willis in Georgia. And they said, here you go. And they did that outside of the judicial process, right? If you're going to open an investigation into somebody, of prosecutors that swear oaths, and there's, some semblance of oversight in the judicial process there, but not with Congress. They can do whatever the hell they want. And they did. And when people denied them, they charged them with crimes like Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro. And so it was propaganda. And the morons in the media, they either knew that and they were okay with that, or they're just as dumb as we think they are. And they bought it. They're like, wow, this is really historic, which is a sad state of affairs, because don't you want those people to have the cognitive capacity to question what they're watching? Do they just take whatever the government hands them and just gobble it up, sucking from their teat? Yeah, but that's not what the media is supposed to do. They're supposed to, what's wrong with this hearing? This is ridiculous. What is this show trial garbage? But they all are just selling their story, right? It should just be like a big commercial, just like with an advertisement underneath it, Pfizer, whatever, Cheney, Pelosi, Kinzinger, whatever. You just get it. They're all just propagandists. And they're admitting it openly. They're sitting there telling us, we wanted it to pop. Just tell the facts, man. Just write the report and we'll be able to tell for ourselves. That's your job, not to sell a fake story. All right, so that is the propaganda arm. Now, I got a lot of questions about this as well, because I would want all that footage. If I'm Trump's defense team defending the January 6th charges, well, great. There's a documentary coming out. Incredible. Perfect. I'd like all the raw footage from everything. Judge, can I please have a subpoena for that? Thank you. Because they're talking about January 6th. They talked about how they got the evidence. That evidence, as we know, was used by Jack Smith. And so I'm entitled to see it. So what is their opinion on it? And all the evidence, subpoena all the documents. Hopefully they got a lot of footage, a lot more interviews, and we can dig into that evidence as well. And they got a lot of bravado, I think. They're telling us what they've done. This is what we've done, and we're proud of it. Kinzinger sitting there doing his stupid little documentary face. We've also got, though, Tom Massie, who is explaining, right, it's all a show, it's all propaganda. He comes back and tells us that the person who found the pipe bomb on January 6th was confirmed now to be a Capitol Hill police officer. And this is important because remember, Steve D'Antuono, who was the former special agent in charge in Washington, D.C., the lead FBI agent in charge of the Insurrection investigation, he said this when Thomas Massie was interviewing him. Massie said, did you see the video of that pipe bomber, the guy pick up the pipe bomb? He said, yeah. What was the chain of custody of that video? Are you sure it get compressed or degraded or anything like that? Yeah. He says, I think you agreed earlier, Mr. FBI, that the two people who found the pipe bombs, right? The two people who found them, they would naturally be suspects. Is that true, Mr. FBI? Well, yeah, he says. I think in any investigation, if the person that's finding the evidence there could possibly be a suspect, then you kind of rule them out, right? By talking to them and getting evidence. So I would suspect that my agents would have ran that to the ground and ruled them out if you find them. Massie says, so, but the person who found, you either haven't identified the person who found the second bomb, or did you? Did you find that guy? Honestly, sir, I don't know the granularity of everything that we did. A lot of stuff was going on. And so D'Antuono didn't know anything about the actual second pipe bomber, who it was, or anything, or at least didn't admit it. So he's either dishonest to Thomas Massie or he's incompetent because he didn't know who the pipe bomber finder was, or the fact that that pipe bomb finder was a Capitol Hill police officer. So now we know that there was some reporting on this, that it has been confirmed, and now Thomas Massie is confirming that as well for us. Here is what this exchange sounded like between Massie and Matt Gaetz.
With Capitol Police.
Correct. Today.
And what did you learn in that meeting?
I learned that backpack guy, January 6th backpack guy, not to be confused with January 5th backpack person. Backpack guy was a non-uniform, plainclothes police officer, in the employ of the Capitol Hill Police.
The person who found the pipe bomb, the person who D'Antuono, who was leading the investigation, say, oh yeah, the person who found it, it'd be investigation 101 that they would be a suspect initially until ruled out. You're saying that person was an undercover, plainclothes Capitol Police officer, and the Capitol Police confirmed that to you today?
They confirmed that to me today, yes. Which, so, by the way,
what does that mean to you?
Well, it heightens some of my concerns and reduces some of the other concerns, okay? One of the concerns that's heightened was, I was trying to give the Secret Service and the Metro Police Department the benefit of the doubt when they took 4 minutes, they finished their lunch before they went and dealt with this pipe bomb. I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt and think that, well, if it's just some random passerby and he said, hey, there's something shiny over there, could be a lawn sprinkler, not sure, maybe want to check it out. But that's not what it was. It was a person who was, they say, again, when I relate this to you, I'm relating what the Capitol Police have told me. They say it was a Capitol Police officer who found this bomb and that he told them it was a bomb. And he radioed it in, said, we've got the device. We found another device. Remember remember, here's the other just amazing timing, is that the first pipe bomb, the one at the Capitol Hill Club, now they call it the RNC pipe bomb, but they really should be calling it the Capitol Hill pipe bomb. I mean, the two buildings are next to each other, but it was like...
The Capitol Hill Club, which is an entity where Republican members of Congress socialize and fundraise.
Right. The reason I'm making that distinction is Darren Beatty, who's done amazing work on this.
No doubt.
He's
Shout
the
out
guy
to Darren.
who's said, hey, you should be asking some of these questions. And I said, you know what? You're right. I will be asking those questions. He points out that the RNC-DNC narrative was made up after the fact. You know, it's really the Capitol Hill Club DNC narrative that they should be talking about, but it just sounds a lot better that, oh, we knew to go look at the DNC once we found one at the RNC.
Interesting.
Well, if you thought somebody was going to blow up the RNC, don't they hate Republicans? Why would they also want to blow up? Anyways, so, you know, they come down, this plainclothes police officer who had been in the vicinity of that one, they had just found that. The timing is remarkable because found 5 minutes before the breach of the bicycle racks at the perimeter of the Capitol. Just a miraculous timing.
With Ray Epps over
that,
there.
you know, would have provided exactly the right timing to distract. After sitting in an alley for 17 hours, you know, found by somebody who says she was going to go do her laundry. Okay, then they respond to that, they secure the area, and 15 minutes later, they find this other bomb. Like, what miraculous timing.
Well, I definitely don't believe that the Capitol Police would purposefully go and set a bomb anywhere that could potentially blow up and do anyone harm. I am not there that they would do something like that. However, you seem to point out in questioning with the ATF director that this wasn't an operational bomb that was going to blow up and hurt anybody. Remember that?
Right. The assistant director in charge, he went on TV and said these were operable bombs and, you know, offered a reward, put out a message that they played on TV.
No.
And so in the beginning of my transcribed interview with him, he still maintained that they were operable.
Well, hold on. We're going to get the ATF director's take on that, questioning from Congressman Massie. Take a listen.
Also, I see that you're cooperating with the FBI. The ATF is on the January 6th pipe bomb investigation. What can you tell us about how that's going?
Remember, these pipe bombs also, they had a 1-hour timer on them. So the one that was placed the night before, it's a 1-hour timer. So what were they going to do, right? They were either exploded or not, and they were not.
Obviously, that's a significant matter. It is an ongoing criminal investigation, and so I'm not going to comment on an ongoing criminal investigation.
Were those pipe bombs operable?
Again, it's an ongoing criminal investigation, and under long-standing policy, I cannot comment.
And we've just had a whole committee for 2 years
ridiculous.
that investigated ongoing investigations, so I'm not accepting that answer from you. We need to know these things. Do you know how the pipe bomb was discovered at the DNC? We've been told how it was discovered at the RNC, and according to a press release from the FBI, you're working with them on this investigation.
Respectfully, I understand your disagreement, but I cannot comment because it is an ongoing criminal investigation.
It's an ongoing cover-up.
So helpful.
It's their policy not to comment on ongoing cover-ups.
Yeah, it seems like it.
So here's what I've come to know since that interview, too. You know, you chase some leads. I believe, based on discussions with police, FBI, and with former ATF, who now works for Capitol Police, that the bombs went to Quantico for inspection, not to the ATF.
Amazing.
Now, he could have just told me that in the hearing.
Oh, interesting.
He could have said, well, we didn't look at the fragments after we blew these things up. It was actually FBI. Quantico looked at them. But he didn't. He wouldn't even tell me that. So he either doesn't know it or just is so
Give it
stuck
back
on
to
it
the
like
FBI.
a broken record on our longstanding policy not to comment.
So we're in this meeting last night, and one of our Republican colleagues turns to you as you're explaining how long it's been, that this has been an open investigation, these videos that show the strange behavior of a person we now know was a plainclothes Capitol Police officer. And one of our Republican colleagues kept pressing you and saying, but Thomas, why would they do this? Why would anyone try to plant these phony fake devices in order to create confusion that day? And, you know, we don't know the answer to that question in all honesty. Do you have a working theory?
Yeah, well, again, I don't know who did it, but I can
Trump
tell you a
up.
consequence of this, because this is buried in the back of the January 6th committee report, that there was a call to bring more bike racks to the Capitol. They had hundreds of them loaded up, ready to bring to the Capitol
Bike
to
racks.
reinforce the Capitol. And it turns out those never made it because this DNC pipe bomb was discovered, and they set up a perimeter and blocked them from coming.
So if there was a booby trap intended to have people commit a technical violation of federal criminal law with no intent to break the law, that was facilitated perhaps by the very interestingly timed discovery of these two devices.
Yeah, whether there was intent or not, the result of this, according to the January 6th committee, was that it made it easier to breach the Capitol because the reinforcements couldn't be brought to the Capitol.
All right, super annoying and ridiculous that they had bike racks. Remember we saw, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, we saw some protests outside the White House. Remember the size of those gates? Remember the size of those fences? They were monstrous, right? Nobody was going over those. They were secured. The building was secured. So in other words, DC knows how to secure a building, right? It's Washington, DC. So why did they have little hurdles that an 8-year-old could just hurdle over, and probably do during track class, to guard the Capitol building on January 6th when they knew a million people were going to show up because they were upset? Why was that? Why were they moving bike racks around? All right, are you kidding me? It's a joke. Because they wanted all of this to happen. And I just want to say that I really enjoyed this format between these two guys, and I'd like to see more of this. I mean, I think it's great that they're talking about the issues in a public forum in a way that we can hear about, and I love it. So shout out to Matt Gaetz for creating this type of format. I think we should have more of our Congress people talking in reasoned terms about the issues, and I really enjoy Thomas Massie for his kind of calm, collected investigation here. So really, really good stuff. Anyways, so we've got that. Now let's turn to some other people who don't have the same level heads. We've got these people reacting over on, I think, MSNBC, and she's explaining that they're getting pretty frustrated here because of these trial delays, right? It's all a show. We have the committee admitting that they are creating this to do some storytelling for America, and we now have evidence that this pipe bomb, we suspect, inoperable and just a diversion, a decoy, something to create a story. If they couldn't cause an insurrection, they'd say Trump was responsible for the pipe bombs or something. And now we have these indictments that are based on that fake story, on that facade. And now Trump is being prosecuted, and they worked very hard to get the trial scheduled before the election. And here is this woman on MSNBC explaining that there are some delays here, and they're getting a little frustrated about it.
Look, the courts move slowly at the best of times, and these are not the best of times stuff. It's surprising that we have not seen a decision from the Court of Appeals in the District of Columbia yet. I think we all anticipated that. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's a problem. These are just judges, 3 judges who have to reach a decision together, and sometimes that takes time. In my career as an appellate lawyer, it often took more than a year. Here we're talking about a matter of weeks. As far as Eileen Cannon goes, though, the handwriting has been on the wall for a long time that she'll do everything she can to prevent trying this case before the election takes place.
What is she talking about? It's a classified documents case. All of these cases take a long time, years, and now they want to squeeze this in months.
She's drawn out this process involved with classified discovery and her decision-making process to the point where the Section 4 hearing won't even take place until the middle of next month. So I think we can count out the possibility that this case gets tried anytime soon.
Yeah. So Florida is probably going to go after the election, and we'll probably see that the J6 case goes until after, well, maybe. I think that they're really going to try to get that one back on track. It doesn't matter when the appellate court decides, SCOTUS decides. I mean, if they could accelerate it, I honestly think Chutkan would schedule a trial for August. I think she'd do it. Like, they've already pulled out all the stops. What do they care? You know, if it's clearly election rigging at this point, they don't care. So we've also got John Bolton. He's now selling a book, which is what they all do now. You know, they just sell a book and they sell it to the same salivating lefty audience. And he was on explaining all this really troubling stuff that Trump is going to do this time. He didn't do it last time, but he's definitely going to do it this time because of reasons.
Essentially would end up with him not departing voluntarily.
Trump's not going to leave.
Well, I think what he would do in terms of seeking retribution through the Justice Department, what he would do potentially through the Defense Department and some of the other agencies of government as well, would produce constant constitutional agitation to the point where I think it could cause government functions almost to break down. And when other mechanisms were applied, state criminal prosecutions, the federal cases, congressional oversight, we would be embroiled in litigation and controversy that could make it almost impossible to get back to normality after he's gone.
See, I hope he goes into some specifics here, because that was a full minute of just platitudes, right? You know, it's going to be constitutional disorder. And this is a point I made yesterday about this is how they talk all the time. You know, Trump's going to be chaotic because he's a total narcissist. He only thinks about himself. Every decision that he thinks about is all about glorifying the edifice of Donald Trump. And now, if we put him back in power, he's not going to leave. And he's going to cause real constitutional turmoil throughout all of America. I just talked for like 30 seconds. I said nothing. I said zero of nothing. All just platitudes. So I hope he's got some examples. Like, what's he going to do? If he says he's not going to leave voluntarily, well, he just left voluntarily after allegedly committing an insurrection. So what are you talking about?
This is because, as I think we saw beyond question in the first term, and I tried to document in my book, he just doesn't know limits. What he cares about is the greater glory of Donald Trump, The concept of the national interest or American national security
specifically
are things he doesn't comprehend.
Like what?
And as I say, the pattern he established in the first term will continue in the second. And
what pattern? He left. What are you talking about?
Just get worse.
What else concerns you, just given that you did work with him up close? You were in the Situation Room with him. You were in these briefings in the Oval Office. I mean, what else are you worried about?
Yeah, what? What, John?
Well, other than COVID, which was a long-term crisis, we really were fortunate in Trump's first term that we didn't have major international crises, the sort of thing that we remember historically.
We were fortunate. Yeah, the stars aligned, and it all just worked out for us. Like, you see how passive that is? Maybe that's because Trump's policies were good.
As very tense times in very short periods of time. We're going through that kind of crisis, I think, now in the Middle East. There are a lot of decisions that have to be made. I don't think Trump is capable of making the decisions grounded in national security.
How come?
His attention span is short.
Oh, okay.
He doesn't know much about world history or world affairs.
Okay.
He actually doesn't think they matter very much. He thinks his personal relationships with foreign leaders, especially the authoritarian.
Again, not a single example. He's just talking like an insult routine. That's all they have. It's wild. And once you see this, you're going to see it everywhere. So it's the same way with George Conway. Every time you hear from him, Liz Cheney sounds like this a lot. It's all talking about the constitutional order, and Trump doesn't read books and stuff like that. What are you talking about? Can you give us something concrete, please?
And once for all,
like, for example, if you say, Rob, what's your problem with Joe Biden? I'd say 10,000 immigrants coming across the border every day, and we've got a proxy war in Russia, and we're going to have another proxy war in the Middle East. There's three things right there. I'm also very upset about his DOJ prosecuting American citizens with double standards, some people going to jail, others not, you know, that type of stuff. Those are specific, concrete examples that I think undermine the Constitution. I can relate every one of those back to the Constitution. But all these people just keep talking about he doesn't read a book.
That matter. And while personal relations in international affairs are important, when you get in a situation like we see in the Middle East now, they're not significant. So faced with these decisions, Trump could go one way in the morning, a different way in the afternoon. He doesn't have the ability to stay consistent for long periods of time, except on one thing, which is how he looks in the press and in public attention. And that is very worrying. When you're in a crisis, you need a president who is resolute, who can keep his eyes on the prize and worry about our national security, not his own image.
Okay, so you saw that. That was 3 minutes of just platitudes. And that's all they talk about. It is kind of a tedious thing. It's like, I would feel badly about myself if I said nothing with all of that breath. Like, come on, you wrote a book and you can't even give us any examples. Here's why, Caitlin. Here's what Trump did in the first term. I think that was just the beginning. Trump did this with Soleimani, and I think that type of pattern is going to happen again with Xi Jinping. Or when I was there in the White House, here's what I saw. And I was able to stop him from doing this thing. Like, even that, like, even if he made up a story, I was in the White House and Trump was about to do this thing and I stopped him from doing it, and I'm not going to be there the second term, and so I'm afraid he's going to do something else. Like, even that, I'd go, okay, at least there's an example. Like, at least you gave us a little bit of information there, not 3 minutes of platitudes and Trump doesn't read books or something. All right, so that is what we're dealing with, all right? It's all fake. They all just have fake stories and they don't even know what they're so upset about. And so they just go out there, and Caitlin Collins and all of them, they just play like this patty cake game about Trump is really bad. And so we're going to continue to call out these fools and these propagandists because the truth is coming out. Guys like Thomas Massie and others are unpacking the truth about what happened on January 6th. And so we'll be here, my friends. I hope you join us as we do. Thank you for liking this video wherever you're watching it. Thank you for subscribing and checking out robertgovea.com. The link is down in the description below. You can grab the PDFs that we read through here, sign up for our daily newsletter, grab some gear from the shop so you can look amazing while you're watching the show. And we'll look forward to seeing you back here on the next one.